Hello, my name is Emjin, and this is how you post a fanfiction on Archive of Our Own. As you can see right now, I'm on the dashboard page of AO3, which is kind of like a portal to different parts of the site. There's a lot of interesting things that you can get to from here. Firstly, you have your list of fandoms, which is basically every fandom you've ever posted in. It'll show up here, and with all the number of fanfictions you've posted there. So if you hit expand, it'll show you the whole thing. And then it'll show your top 4 or 5 most recent works right there. And then your series. I only have 4 series, so they all show up down here, but if you had more, it would only show the first couple. And then it shows your recent bookmarks down here. And then up here, you have on the left hand side, you have your basic profile stuff. So this is where you control what your page looks like, and where you get emails and stuff. That's all right here. Then you have your full list of works you get to by clicking here. Then you have your drafts, so things that you are working on but are saved. I don't generally use my drafts, so it's empty. And then you have your series list. I showed you it down below, but here's another way to get to it. And then you have your bookmarks. I have a lot of them because I collect things. And then you have collections. So collections are a little different than series because they can be interactive things and other people can post in them. So if you had any of those, they'd go here. And then this is your inbox. This is where any comments you get on your stories will show up. And then your statistics, which will show how many views your stories have, how many kudos, etc., etc. And then here's your history. This keeps track of what you look at. So if you read something a while ago and now need to find it again, it'll be in your history. And then your subscriptions. This is the stories and people you're subscribed to. This is really hard to navigate because as far as I know, there's no way to filter it by fandom. So I don't use this very much. Even though I am subscribed to things, I just avoid this tab. And then down here, this is your more interactive stuff. So this is signups for different fandom events you're part of. If you're part of a gift exchange, this would be where your sign up that you're signed up for, that'll show. And then you have your assignments. So in a gift exchange, you'll get assigned someone to write for, and your assignment will show up here. And apparently it doesn't go away even after you fill the assignment, because I have filled this assignment. And then down here, this is where your claims go. So another interactive thing AO3 does is people will submit a whole mess of prompts and you can claim one and write for it. So if you had any claims, which I don't have any outstanding ones right now, they would go here. And then this is related works. So this is works that you say are related to yours, or other people say theirs are related to yours. I have this one Stormlight Archive fanfiction was loosely inspired by someone else's, so I have their fic linked so that people can find it. And then down here, these are gifts, so these are fics that other people have given to you. And then up here you have, this is one way of posting, you have your edit work. So this is a way if you wanted to mass edit a lot of your fanfictions, if that's where you do it. This is how you can this is would be subscribed to you. Apparently you could subscribe to yourself. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. And this is invitations, so you can invite other people to join AO3. You get a new invitation every period of time that you're on the site. I don't know how long. I think I've got one right now, so if anyone needs to get on AO3. But anyway, what we're going to work on today is how you post things. So I generally go from up here. So you have 2 options, new work and import work. Import work is allows you to import something from another site. It doesn't work for fanfiction.net, so I've never used it. So that would be the only website that I'd need to do that from. So if you're going to cross post from fanfiction.net, you have to do it manually because it's fanfiction.net. But we're going to work on this upper one, new work. So when you hit new work, you end up with this page here. So there's all this information that you have to fill in. And anything in red you have to fill out. Anything that's not in red you don't have to, but it's a good idea to fill out as much information as you can, because the great thing about AO3 is that it gives people the option to include or exclude things they're either interested in or not interested in. So it's much easier to filter out things you don't like, which as someone who came over from fanfiction.net, when all you could exclude was characters and wide like genre ranges and ships, it's a lot easier to filter out stuff you don't like on a website that lets you filter for any tag under the sun. So that's very helpful. So first thing, we're going to start with our ratings. So there's these 4 ratings, which I think we talked about on the 5 ratings, sorry. We talked about this somewhere. Not rated is just like, as it implies, you didn't put a rating on it, but the archive treats not rated fan fictions like they're mature, so keep that in mind if you ever don't rate something. General audiences, I interpret this to be something you'd be comfortable giving an elementary school kid to read, which is probably the reason I've never used this tag, because I don't think I've ever written something I'd be comfortable giving an elementary school kid to read. Then we have teen and up audiences. I think of this as like a PG-13 movie, so like if you could watch the MCU, you can read this fan fiction, you'll be fine. Then we have mature. This one I generally define as like things with a lot of trigger warnings. So if there's a list of things that could be triggering that are in this fan fiction, I generally say it's mature. And then explicit, like I've heard you can do like explicit for things that are like really graphically violent, but in my experience, most explicit fan fiction is not suitable for work. Like it's smut. So that's something to keep in mind both as posting and when you're like reading fan fiction like as a whole on AO3. If you're not into that, this is probably a tag to avoid. But anyway, this fan fiction has a lot of like heavy triggering themes. It deals with the end, it's Peaky Blinders, and it deals with the end of with the aftermath of season 5, so there's a lot of suicidal themes, so we're gonna rate it mature just to make sure that people like are careful going in. So now we have our archive warnings. So we have these options. First is choose not to use archive warnings. This is basically like either you choose not to say anything, or there's a different warning that isn't covered by these, because there's some things that aren't, that I kind of think should be. But the thing you have to realize about choose not to use archive warnings is that it should be treated as it has warnings in it. So like even if like the big 4 warnings aren't actually in this fanfiction, they could be. So if you see something with that warning, be careful. Then you have graphic depictions of violence, which is self-explanatory. Then we have major character death, which is also pretty self-explanatory, though I think it's mostly supposed to be if you like are killing like Gansey, for example. But I've also used it for minor characters who die, but their death is a big part of the fan fiction, so I'll also use it then. This is no archive warnings apply. Be very careful. Like, make sure there are no warnings. I don't generally use this one because I prefer to over tag rather than like under tag. So I just kind of, if I think there are no warnings, I tend to use this one just to be safe. Then we have rape non-con, which is, self-explanatory. And then we have underage. I'm honestly not quite sure what a fan fiction that would need this wording would look like. I don't think I've ever been in a fandom where one was used, or at least as far as I noticed. So do some research, I guess. This one, I'm going to give it a graphic depictions of violence tag. It's only for like a paragraph, but I think that I'd rather be safe than sorry, so I'm going to put it in there. Now we have our fandoms. So like you kind of start typing and it gives you suggestions. So this is a Peaky Blinders fanfiction. So if you type in Peaky Blinders, it'll come up with 2 options, Peaky Blinders TV and Peaky Blinders RPF, which stands for real person fiction. This is TV, so we're going to put it there. And then like if you were writing a crossover, you would put in the other fandom too. So like if say this was a Raven Cycle crossover, right there. There's no the, so if you just be careful with that. There also is a Dreamer trilogy. There is a Dreamer trilogy tag now. There wasn't at first, so like that's a good thing to know. Come on. There we go. And like just like if you're posting in a fandom that doesn't exist, you just type in the name. Like if it's a TV show, you'll just type in what it's called and you'll put TV, or you'll put the name and then author. And then like if you can't find your fandom, make sure you try it a couple ways. Like as I mentioned, there isn't a the in the Raven Cycle one, so it like if you type in the Raven, it doesn't like come up. So you have to like try it in a couple different ways in order to get it to come up the way it actually is. So, all right, moving on down to the not required categories. We have relationship categories. So we have female, 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 male, gen, multi, male, male, multi, and other. Just a couple. These three I think are pretty self-explanatory. This is gen. I've heard some people define gen as like canon relationships, but generally, a gen fanfiction is platonic. So if like romance is a big like part of your fan fiction, like it's not gen. And then multi is both like multiple different relationships or like relationships with more than two people in them. So your AO3 and polyam fanfics would go here. And then I'm not even sure what this other is. I've seen people use it for family relationships, but I generally just tag those gen, so I'm not quite sure what this would be. The other thing is you can like select multiple different types of relationships if there's more than one that implies. So I'm actually going to select two. First is gen, because largely this fanfiction is gen. But we're also going to select female male because there turned out to be a random Tommy Lizzie scene in this fanfiction that I wasn't expecting. So we're going to put that in there too. So now we get on to relationships, and this is going to be like the different, like both ships and like platonic relationships that are in your story. I generally tag them based on importance, but in circumstances like this fanfiction where I can't decide what the most important relationship is, I'll just do them chronologically. You don't necessarily have to do it that way. It's just the way that makes sense to me, so that's the way I do it. So what you'll do is, just like with the fandoms, you'll start typing a relationship. So we're going to put Tommy Shelby, and it will come up with a list of different relationships that have been in the archive. So what I'm looking for is a relationship between Tommy Shelby and this character named Jesse Eden. Let's see. We're going to go back out here so I can show you. So Jesse Eden. And we come up with these three. This is the closest we can get to the tag I'm looking for, because Tommy and Jesse were a romantic relationship in season 4. So obviously most people who write about them romantically. I don't actually ship them. I just think that their interactions as friends are cool. So I'm doing this platonically. So I'm going to like create my own tag by just typing it in. So like it doesn't come up with anything, see, but it's still fine because it still like will work just fine. And if other people keep using this tag, they'll all fit together, because that's what the tag wranglers, their job is like to make sure everything fits together. The tag wranglers, for just people who don't know, are the group of volunteers who control, like, they like keep track of the tags on AO3 and they make sure everything works correctly and stuff. But anyway, that's otherwise. So now we're going to add the next one, which is Oswald Mosley, who is the villain. We're going to have to add him the same way as Jesse, actually. Okay, and then we have, this one will actually show up. Ada Shelby and Tommy Shelby. And then we're going to put Tommy Shelby and Lizzie Stark. And we're going to put Grace in here too, because she's sort of in this fanfiction, albeit as a ghost. So those are my different relationships. And then we're going to do our characters. I tend to do this by order of importance, which doesn't necessarily need to happen that way. It's just the way I like doing it. So I'm going to start with my point of view character, and then we're going to do it by like the order, because as previously stated, I can't decide who's the most important in this. I'm going to do it by chronologically for this one. So Oswald Mosley, yuck. Ada Shelby. Who else is in this? Lizzie. And we're going to put Grace. She's in this fic earlier than Lizzie and Ada are, but she's technically a ghost, so we're going to put her at the end. I sometimes will put put a mentions of tag and then other characters, but I read that the tag wranglers prefer it if like characters that aren't actually in the fanfiction are down here in additional tags, just to make it easier for people to sort. So I'm trying to stop doing that now. Alright, so now we're going to go down to additional tags. This is like your place to put anything else about your fanfiction, and also other warnings, because as you probably noticed up here, there's a lot of things that could theoretically be triggering that aren't covered by these 4, so I tend to put them down here. I have an order in which I like to do these things. I like to do like where the fanfiction is, like chronology stuff first, and then warnings, and then other tags. So we're gonna start with our chronology tag, which is post season 5. And then I have a list, because just to make this easier for me, I have a list here. So we're going to just kind of copy paste, because so suicidal thoughts, because as previously stated, this is post season 5, and I can't spell. Curses. 1 second. This is embarrassing. Fascism, because Mosley. What else is in here? This is why I did this, is because I knew that once I was filming this, I wouldn't remember what I wanted to add. So like, as you can see, like if you put something in, it'll give you all these lists of things that you can come up with. So like, I'm gonna put alcoholism on here because that's pretty active, but like if you're just like mention something passingly, it'd be this one. And then we're gonna put drug abuse in here too, because as previously mentioned, it's season 5. I'm gonna put, and like, just because it's not in there doesn't mean you don't have to do it. Just because it's not in there doesn't mean you can't use it. It just means that nothing else will come up if you click on it. It means no one else has used that tag before. What else is in here? This one might not be necessary, but I tend to just put it in there whenever I think it might be, just to be safe. Because that's kind of the way I look at this, is like, even if you're not sure whether or not something needs to be warn for it. That way, like, because it's better safe than sorry. This last one is kind of a tag of mine. I don't think anyone else but me uses it, but I like it, so I basically built it on my own. And some people will add like more like fandom specific stuff, like Tommy Shelby's Unending Paranoia, which is pretty accurate. And then I used to be really good at coming up with witty things to put in my tags, but then I somehow lost them. So now I just kind of do things that are not like interesting. So once I've got all these in here, it's gonna be like that. Also, like I sometimes use like cross-posted, like if I was gonna post this whole thing on Tumblr, which I'm not, because it's 6,000 words and big things on Tumblr don't work. So I'd put a cross-posted on Tumblr tag, or I have some, like, there's also like an originally posted tag. So it's just to kind of let people know where else they might find this. So I think this is everything I'm going to put in here. It's a very depressing set of tags. It's post season 5 Peaky Blinders. It's angst. It's basically just 6,000 words of angst. I can't pretend it's anything other than it is. But anyway, now that we've done that part, we're going to move down to this part. This is first we got the work title. So it's another thing in red that we have to do. So you have to title your fanfiction, even if it's just like a little thing. We're going to title it this, which might be bad, but I think it sounds cool, so we're doing it anyway because I'm a bad titler anyway. And like, if you were like writing it with someone, you'd put their title, their like username here. Like, this is Mod Mist, for example. So, anywho, like, this is just me though, so it's gonna stay like as it is. And then we're gonna put in our, oh dear, I did all this writing. I didn't write a summary. Okay, give me 1 second to come up with a summary. Give me 1 second. When in doubt, just use the first line and then go like this. Or, normally I'm really good at this, but I really like writing summaries generally. I'm annoyed at myself for not writing this one. Nah, that's good enough for now. Maybe I'll rewrite it later. Okay, so now that I've done that, we have notes at the beginning. And at the end, I don't think this one has any end notes, so we're going to leave that one unchecked. But I did write my author's note. I actually write way less. I used to be like the queen of really long author's notes back when I was posting on fanfiction.net. But my author's notes are much smaller now that I think it's because I post about stuff on Tumblr. But anyway, we're going on now, and so now we have the associations. So we have posts to collections / challenges. So like you would type in like the thing you wanted, like if it was part of something, like this is last year's Raven Cycle Big Bang. So like when we post this year, there'll be a similar collection you'll post to that you'll search in this place and click on it. And like, so it'd be like that, and then you can X out here. And then like if you're giving this work to someone, you would type their username in here. So again, say you wanted to give modness to fanfiction for being such a great mod, this is where you would do it. Also, like for collections, there's also like a couple anonymous collections. So like if you were writing something that you didn't want people to know you wrote, you would post it in something like this. It's not quite anonymous. Like there are ways to figure out if you've posted, who wrote the fanfiction. If you really want to be completely anonymous, you have to orphan it, but then you basically waive your right to the fanfiction and can't edit it anymore. So I would suggest not doing that. This is where, like, if you were inspired by something, or like you're doing a translation or a podfic, which is basically where it's an audiobook basically, you would put it in here. If you're posting for another fanfiction.net, not fanfiction.net, another AO3 fanfiction, all you have to do is put the URL. But if it's something from another site, you have to do these sorts of things. And then if your work is part of a series, which is basically if it's like either part of something or if it's a linked short story sequence. This is part of a linked short story sequence. I really like linked short story sequences. They're a lot easier to maintain than multi-chapters are because they have a lot of stopping places. So I have 4 here. This is part of this one called Doom Days, which is, it's called that because I'm titling all of the fan fictions with lyrics from that song, which might be tacky, but I'm doing it anyway. If you were going to create a new series, you'd type the title in here. And then you have, yeah, but if you wanted to put some things in like more than one, like say it was part of this and it was prompted, which this is just a series I made so I can keep track of the stuff I write to prompts. What you'd do is you'd save it down below, we'll get to that part later, and then you go back and add another one. And this is like if your fic has multiple chapters, so like you can do chapter 1 of 754, for example, or you can just leave it as a question mark, and then you can type in what your chapter title would be. Obviously, I tend to name things in parts, not chapters. Otherwise, it wouldn't be suggesting that. But this one is not. And then this is to set a different publication date, so if you wanted to backdate or forward date it. This is especially important if you're like loading in like chapters of a fanfiction together and then posting them separately. You have to change the publication date in order to get it to show back up at the top, but I'll talk about that later. Then you have to select a language, so you have many languages. So this one is in English, so we selected there. And then I've never used a work skin. I'm not quite sure what it is, so ask someone else about that, I guess. And then we have privacy. You have the option to only show your work to registered users, which means that if someone's not logged into AO3, they can't see it. You can disable anonymous commenting, and you can enable comment moderation so that, like, your fan fiction, like, you have to okay a comment before other people can see it. I generally don't use these unless I'm writing something really experimental and I'm nervous, but this one I don't think is necessary. So I'm just going to leave all that the way it is. And then you have your work text. I guess you theoretically could write a fan fiction in these text boxes. I wouldn't suggest it, so don't, but I guess you could. So you have two options for formatting. You have HTML and you have rich text. I always use rich text because I don't really know HTML. So I just kind of go over here and then I copy paste, which some people have issues with. I never have had like formatting issues, even back when I was using my old laptop. So we're going to copy paste first. First you have to highlight everything. Control C, and then we come back over here. All right. So now we scroll up and make sure everything looks right and that like all of the things are centered. Sometimes they'll switch over to the side. They have like a little like center bar here, like a horizontal line, but I tend to just use the thing I use when I write. There we go. I think that looks right. So now we have three options. We have preview, post, and cancel. Don't click cancel because you'll lose all your progress. Post is just, it'll go right out into the world. I wouldn't click that one either because something might be messed up. I always hit preview just to check that everything's working. And it'll come preview work. And then now it's saved as a draft technically, and you have like a month to finish it. So now see, so it'll show up. This is what it basically will look like once you post it. So you have all your different things, make sure they're all correct, blah, 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 blah. And then it's down here. And if you like the way it is, then you can either hit save as draft, which will save it and you can come back and work on it. You can either go back and edit it, which is what you'll do if you wanted to add it to a second series. And then, actually, I'll show you how you do that. So like you go back and it's got everything in here. Don't uncheck things. But like, see, you can add a second series like there. Or you can remove it from that series. So we're going to preview it again. And then if it looks correct, which it does to me, we're going to hit post. And now it's out in the world. Ta-da! So you'll have all of your different things. And then that's basically how you post like a single chapter fan fiction on AO3. But if you're posting a multi-chapter, I have actually a second thing I can post that I'm going to, and I will show you how to post, how to add a second chapter, because that's actually way less complicated. So firstly, we're just going to close this. And here's the other chapter that I wrote last night because I wanted to do this. And this is also this is also Peaky Blinders. And you'll notice that the fanfiction we just posted hasn't shown up yet. That's because it takes it a couple minutes to get connected into the archive. So it'll show up in like a minute or two. But right now this is actually the fanfiction that we're going to add to. This is the different thing. This is actually written for a collection. So see how it's in a collection down here. But we're just going to add a chapter. You can also like edit the whole thing or edit tags. We're just going to add a chapter. And see how it comes up like this? So this is like a brief thing here, like of the sort of thing that you're doing. And like, so I'm going to put 4x1 in here because that's the season, that's the episode it's in. And then have your chapter number. And then your publication date. You can leave this as it is. I'm going to leave this as it is because I'm posting this right away. But if you were like going to save it and then post it later, then when you post it, you have to change this. Otherwise, it's not going to come to the top of the archive. So then you have the option to add co-creators. And then this is a chapter summary. Like if you like this will show up like in the emails your subscribers get and like at the top of the page. I don't normally use it just because I don't think it's necessary, but a lot of people do and it's interesting. I follow a fan fiction that the author will summarize what's happened so far in the chapter summary, and it's always entertaining. But anyway, so we're gonna have our chapter notes. We actually have chapter notes for both the end and the beginning this time. So there's the first one. And there's the second one. So now we go down here, and then we switch to rich text because that's just the way I do it. And then we post this. Alright, so now that it's all in, we preview. And you'll notice it doesn't do a full preview like it does like when you're posting the first part, which has always annoyed me, but whatever, I guess. So this is also saved as a draft. You roll down here. You could theoretically save it as a draft. Like if you were, say you're posting a 20 chapter finished fan fiction for the Big Bang and you want to put the whole thing in at once so you can make sure it's in order and stuff before you post, you'd save all the chapters you're not posting right away as drafts and then post them as you go. But this is just going to get posted right away. So we're going to hit post. And then it comes up like this. And there we go. So you'll notice how this is in my prompted work series. And then, all right, so then there's one last thing we can do, and that's how you share something on Tumblr. So I have to turn my ad blocker off to do this for whatever reason. Otherwise it doesn't pop up right. So you hit share, and then you have the ability to tweet it. I technically have a Twitter, but I don't use it, so I've never done this. And then you have Tumblr. So you hit that and it'll come up with this. This should be familiar for anyone who uses Tumblr. And then you can change your blogs here, and you put your tags in here. Just remember that only like the first 5 tags you use on Tumblr show up in the searches. And honestly, I'm not sure to what extent AO3 posts show up in the tags at all because Tumblr doesn't like links to other sites. But whatever. And then you can like add on things down here. This video, you'd hit post when you post it, and then yeah. So leaving the site, close. Come on. I'm gonna turn my ad blocker back on. And then we go back here. And like that's basically how it works. And somehow that hasn't shown up yet, which is interesting. But AO3's been slow recently, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. So long story short, that's how you post things on AO3. Thank you for putting up with me for the last half hour, and I hope that you have much success in your AO3 posting endeavors. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.